Hello and welcome back to What is Tabletop podcast, where we talk all things tabletop, but today we're talking specifically the dice, the clickety-clacks, the things that make you go woo. I am Frank. I've been doing this for about 10 plus years, and Charles is...
Woo!
Yeah, he's new. As you can tell, he likes the dice.
Dice.
So what are we talking about today, Charles? Obviously dice.
Mostly because while I've been playing some of these tabletop games and talking about them, it's kind of inspired me to kind of create my own. I'm still working on it. We may talk about it on here, we may not. We'll see. But as of right now, Frank and I were discussing, the different types of dice systems you can have. Because again, I'm not a mathematician by any means. I just like clickety clacks. So we're gonna be talking about the different types of dice systems you can use, in your games. So we're gonna do that today, I think.
Yeah, and I failed calculus. So I think we are the perfect kind of people to be talking about the math of dice for sure.
When every time I hear the word calculus, I don't know if you remember the parody band from boy band from back in the.
Remember, we are 10 years apart in age.
I know, but you have an old soul.
Dice are secretly math rocks that surprisingly get people to have to do math, and also you find out very quickly how many people are bad at basic arithmetic.
Oh man, it's funny because I don't think I'm all that bad at basic arithmetic, but I'll be honest, with the first few times I played, I'm like, I think it's more of a nerves, doing things on the spot.
What was my multiplier? I know it's right on this sheet. But I don't remember.
Yeah.
Oh no, everyone's looking at me now.
Well, and that's what and then I got really good. I'm like, oh, this is this.
Yeah, it does help if you just remember how your character works, and then it's not as difficult.
Yeah.
It was really funny. I remember one time, I think I rolled 8d6 or something, and I counted the damage really quick, and I was like, this much, and they're like, wow, that was really quick, Frank. How'd you do that? I'm like, it's simple addition. I hate to tell you, it's just simple addition.
You want to know my secret? My secret is I know how to add.
I was like, my secret is that algebra was very easy for me, and calculus was not.
For someone who's so more with the words.
More with the words.
Yes, as he says is on his YouTube channel.
He's very good at the thinking parts.
I'm good at the speaking and the writings, but not so much good at the mathemagizing.
Mathemagizing.
So
luckily, I'm decent at the mathemagizing.
So yeah, and as a GM, you math is, you kind of have to be a little bit quicker on it than everyone else. But yeah.
Well, I would think, okay, before we obviously get into the main part of this video, when it comes to RPG stuff, it is interesting how you do need to know a little bit about, you do need to break it down to the math, right?
Yeah, of course.
We talked about in our more mechanics to steal video that when it comes to minions, it's easy on the maths because you just have to know one hit kills them.
Yeah.
But you can math out a little bit more with hit points and stuff like that for bigger enemies. And so it's the same with figuring out what kind of dice you even want for your system. Because spoiler alert, when you're rolling dice predominantly for your system, you should probably know what kind of dice you're rolling, because that's going to determine how you do everything else for the system.
That is correct. Well, again, I'm still kind of playing with my game. Frank was ever so kind to show me, hey, this stuff is on the internet too. You can look up dice tables and see what the percentage of what things are going to be. And I'm like, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Yep. I usually always go to the internet. But I figured I had Frank, so he's just as good as the internet. Yeah,
I'm okay sometimes. It depends on the thing. I can tell you what the average die roll is for 2d6. I can't tell you what the average die roll is for 3d6 or so on and so forth. So,
but all right, so let's go ahead and talk about some of these different systems.
Yeah.
So first, we're going to talk about the one dice to rule them all.
Let's be serious, Charles. We're talking about math rocks here. Okay.
Math does rock. Okay.
Thank you.
You know what else rocks?
Schoolhouse.
Geology.
We both did separate jokes, and that was great. Listen, when it comes to the one dice system, everyone's going to default to a D20.
Yes.
And you can. I also lump in a D100 because even though it's technically 2 dice, it counts as 1 die together.
Well, you can get one D. You can get a.
You can get a D100.
It's like a golf ball.
I don't know why you would do that, but
that's before I played with you guys really, and that's the only D100 I was, because the people that when I initially saw a D100, it was the golf ball looking one.
Yeah. Here's the thing about the 1 die system. Obviously, you're rolling 1 die, so you get to pick your favorite die, and that's all you roll. There's some fun in that. You get to less math. You don't have to add 2 different dice together. It's that 1 die plus whatever modifiers you do, stuff like that. The downside to a 1-die system is how swingy it is. The likelihood of rolling a 20 and a 1 on a d20 are the same, but the outcomes are vastly different.
Yep.
And so sometimes to mitigate that, you might have systems that give an insane bonus to the die rolls. So like Pathfinder gives like plus 10s, plus 20s to mitigate that. So when you roll a 1 or a 2 or a 3, it's not a 1 or 2 or 3. It's a 21, 22, 23. And so that helps a little bit there.
Gotcha.
Conversely, you can do what D&D does, where you just roll it multiple times and then take the higher, which kind of, it fixes that problem, sure. But then like it's still kind of has the same issue where it's like the statistics are still pretty swingy. It just means that you're more likely to get a higher number or a lower number depending on what you do. I think most people are going to assume when they hear RPG, they hear it's a 1 die. I roll 1 die and then maybe I roll multiple dice for like damage, but like for an attack or whatever skill I'm going to do, I'm going to roll 1 die. You don't have to roll above a number. You can roll below the number too, but recognize the math does not change. Yeah. You're still going to roll, the likelihood of rolling higher or lower is the exact same in that regard. So I would always keep that in mind. If you're going to have 1 die as your main rolling thing, recognize the swinginess of it. If that is what you want, perfectly fine, go for it. I will say, going into this, I think Kids on Bikes also has...
Yes.
Technically, it is a 1 die system because you're only ever rolling 1 die to determine what the result is. The thing is, with that, is you're rolling either a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, or a D20.
Right.
The swinginess is still there. And that's why I'm like a little hesitant about the Kids on Bike system, because even if I'm really good and my D20 is in my best like stat, I could still roll a 1 and it would suck. Conversely, they have like dice that explode where if you get the highest number, you get to roll it again.
Yep.
And like,
I love that.
Which idea. It's a cool idea, but like it also doesn't make sense where this is going to be my worst stat. And so the D4 goes in my worst stat, but that means it's more likely to explode. And so I'm more likely to roll multiple dice, thus getting potentially higher numbers. I don't know. It's a weird, again, haven't played the system, so maybe in practice it actually doesn't look like that.
I was watching Dimension 20 and they did Kids on Brooms, which is just Kids on Bikes but more of a magical setting. Like literally it's Harry Potter's, literally what they were playing. So, and like the exploding dice things, I think it's a cool thing because it didn't happen all the time, but it happened often enough too, because it'd be one of those things where it's like, okay, your difficulty is an 8. Okay, well, all I've got is a D4. So they'd have to explode at least twice.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it fun, because, again, as long as the DM or the GM is making those checks, you know, like if it's going to be a difficult check, make sure it's a difficult check. You know, if it's going to be an easy check, make sure it's an easy check. You know what I mean?
And then that's, again, where, like, understanding the math comes in. Where it's like, okay, the percentage of me rolling a second D4 is 25%, which means if I want a D4 to have the detriment, I should probably make an average roll an 8.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So the next dice system that we're going to talk about is dice curve systems. So the idea is you're rolling multiple of the same dice. It could be 2. It could be 3. That's about it, though. Maybe 4. Probably not more than 4.
4, yeah.
Any Powered by the Apocalypse system. So the Avatar RPG, the Root RPG, I believe City of Mist also does 2d6. Daggerheart by Critical Role is doing 2d12. So that's basically a dice curve system. You also have the Matt Colville RPG. They're doing 2d6 as well, because that's where their math ended up. And so the benefits of a dice curve system is it's a bell curve. You know statistically what is the most likely outcome. And because you know the most likely outcome, you can actually have set DCs that you never have to adjust. And that is honestly great, right? So City of Mist, I think, has it where it's like, if you get a 6 or lower, you fail, like flat out. 7, 8, or 9 is a partial success. 10 or higher is a full success.
Yeah.
And that's how it is.
Yeah.
You never change the difficulty as a GM. You're only changing what additional modifiers are added to that roll to make it more or less likely that you succeed. And I think that's awesome that that's the kind of thing that happens. You also can, again, do the math with 3d6 and understand. I think that's GURPS does 3d6.
GURPS, yeah.
And again, you can do the math, be like, where's the bell curve? This is where it's most likely to land. Therefore, we can predetermine the scenarios and this and that. And now it's a lot easier to do as well, which is nice.
Yeah.
What is the downside of this, Charles?
Not enough clickety-clacks going clickety-clack.
Yes, exactly. We found this out when we were picking a new RPG.
That's right.
We were able to determine the theme that we wanted. It was kind of sci-fi-ish. And I was like, okay, we have these 3 books that we've come down to? Everybody pick the one you want to play, and everyone picks Star Wars. Why did they pick Star Wars?
More of the clickety clacks.
Literally because they wanted to roll dice more. And so that is the thing, is you will find a lot of cinematic focus games are going to use this because of the fact that it's a curve and it's more predictable and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it makes it to where like my character who wants to do the thing is statistically likely to do the thing, and it's not unlikely. But people really like to roll multiple dice. And so that might yeah. So like you have to then start weighing, am I going to be able to roll multiple dice, or am I going to be able to have a more cinematic storytelling with the kind of system that I want to do? Yeah. And if you have players who just want to roll out the dice and just fight things, the dice curve system is not necessarily what people are going to be wanting to play.
Correct. We love Star Wars. We're enjoying the game. But looking in hindsight, I think there would have been more. I don't know. I just feel like there's something more to Traveler than than meets the eye.
Well, and that's the thing. We as a group haven't had a chance to play a more cinematic focused game.
No, we haven't.
I think the closest we got was you and Jeffrey playing an example of Daggerheart.
Yeah.
And like you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, we did.
You enjoyed it a lot.
Daggerheart was fun.
And it was interesting. And like all you're doing is rolling 2d12s. Mm-hmm. And then you roll more for damage and stuff like that.
I'll play it again.
Yeah, no, Dagger, and they keep updating it, so that's good. Yeah, like that's the thing is it does more cinematic focus games are going to do dice curves again because of the math, and it just helps.
And I'll be honest with my game, it's probably going more towards that direction.
Right.
I feel
because what it can do is like we talked about, where you can do levels of success and levels of like how well you did. And it's very easy to do that with dice curves because, again, the math has been determined. Like, that math's not changing, right? A D20 rolling once, you can't predict. You can't predict the outcome. Everything's equal amount. But 2D6, you can predict the outcome. It's most likely 7, right? That's why we have gambling tables, because you can try to predict the outcome and you will fail statistically every time. It's super easy in a cinematic thing where you just preset the thing. And now you're like, cool, I can focus on the story.
Yes,
I can focus on that because the like success fail, and like it's really good to just have a player go, I don't succeed. That was a 3.
Yep.
Right. Instead of it being like, I got a 13. Does that hit? And it's like, 13. Hold on. Yes, 13 hits. Yeah. Right. Or no, 13 doesn't hit. Right.
Right.
To be able to just roll dice and be like, I succeed. That was a 9. Right.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Is much easier than anything else. So
the next dice system we're gonna be talking about is the dice pool, where you have
a bunch of the same dice.
Multiple of the same dice.
I don't know if we're an ASMR channel now because you just did that.
I lost the dice too.
Like, I don't know. Here's the thing. You lost the die? Goodness. Here's the thing about it's fine, Charles. You don't have to look for it, Charles.
No, it's over there.
Okay.
It's too far away.
Oh, I have to get up to get it. It's so far away.
Sorry.
He is literally tethered in by the headphones, so I get it. Look, here's the thing about dice pool systems. You get to roll all the clickety-clacks in the world.
The clickety-clacks.
Or at least that your character can do it, which is really fun. It can be a fun thing. There's 2 different ways predominantly to do the clickety-clacks. There's you have a set number, and for every die you roll that hits that number or higher or lower, depending on how you do it, every number that succeeds counts as 1 success. And then you need a certain number of successes in order to fully succeed. Vampire does this very well. They have a D10 system. You're rolling a lot of D10s, and if you get a 6 or higher, which means, again, you can do the math, it's a 50% chance of succeeding.
Yep.
For each individual die. If you get a 6 or higher, then that's a success, and you need a certain amount of successes in order to do the thing you want to do. They also obviously have things like if you roll an at 1, something happens. If you roll an at 10, things happen. Right. But that's for a separate video when we eventually maybe talk about Vampire. You could also do Fallout also does the same thing.
Fallout does this as well.
Even though you're rolling 2 d20s, you're not adding the dice combinations together. You're trying to look for the amount of successes. And you determine what the target number is based off of your skills and your special stat. Yeah. Which I think, again, we've talked about. Go watch our Fallout video. It's very good. We talked about how much we enjoyed the Fallout system. And then you can add more dice in as needed.
Right.
Conversely, there's also what Blades in the Dark and Candela do, where you're rolling a bunch of dice and you're just picking one result. But hopefully that one result is a successful result. So in Blades in the Dark and Candela, you're rolling D6s. Only the 6 is a full success.
Right.
4 or 5 is a mixed success. 3 or lower is a failure. And so you want to roll a lot of dice. And when you roll a lot of dice, you get to choose which of those dice is the one that you want. And that can also bring some interesting things too, mechanically speaking, where like perhaps you choose a lower value die because it gives you a benefit. Even though you might want to succeed in this thing, I'm going to choose this other die because it's going to let me to do X, Y, or Z, which Candela tried to do. We'll maybe talk about that eventually when we do a Candela video, but yeah, oof. Yeah, we'll talk about it, but that's the idea of the dice pool system. That's the pros of all the dice pool system. The con, it is actually probably more time consuming than any other dice system because you have to look at each individual dice. And sure, you might only be looking for one result if it's the Blades in the Dark, but if it's not Blades in the Dark, if it's any other system, you're looking for multiple results, and that's going to take a lot of time, and that could be problematic. So, benefits and stuff like that. Also, if you're doing a dice pool system, you really need a way to make sure you're rolling a lot of dice. Yes. So the vampire, any of the power, or any of the vampire, werewolf, and Hunter the Reckoning, all of those games use the same dice pool system, but what they'll do is they'll have skills that you can put up to 5 or like up to 10, something like that. You can put a lot of points into, and then you have stats that you can also put a lot of points into, and then you just combine those, and that's how many dice you're rolling. So inherently in those systems, you're rolling a lot of dice just based off of what you do. Like when we played Hunter, remember that? Like you were an influencer, and so like you were really good at like influencing people, which was awesome.
That was great.
Conversely,
that was fun.
Conversely, you can have a system like Blades in the Dark and Candela where you're not rolling a lot of dice, but you have ways to add more dice into your pool, thus making it more likely for you to succeed. And if you're going to do that second option, make sure you have you have a lot of resource, because it becomes a resource management game at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Like talk about Candela from your experience, Charles, with the resource management.
So with Candela, the way it was set up was it felt like you're supposed to specialize, but when it came down to certain things that happened in game, your specializations didn't come in as handy anymore. Right. Like if you didn't have anything in fighting, you were screwed.
Right, because you're rolling 2d6 and taking the lower.
Yeah, you're taking the low. Yeah, exactly. You're rolling 2d6 and you're taking the lowest of that, and like you've already set yourself up for failure with it. So it's like, okay, well, I don't have any fighting skills because I want it to be this. Right. I want to be the face. I want to be this charismatic person to talk my way out of things. So
if you're not good with your design, it can make it to where now if you're totally bad in something that's crucial, it sucks for you.
Yeah, that's the thing too. There's too many times I feel like in Candela where certain skills would come up just because they're like everyday skills, like driving.
Right.
In combat, like if you're gonna have a combat game or you have combat in your game, I feel like everyone should have like that should be something, at least one pip or one mark in there. You can't just be like, I guess you're just not a fighter. I guess you're just gonna go down. Hope you know how to help people with your words.
It was just like that, where it's just you want to have a little bit of everything. That's fine. It does make a dice pool system harder because you're spreading out your resources, your dice that you get to roll. But Blades in the Dark does it pretty well.
Yes.
But Blades in the Dark also tells you up front, like, hey, you should probably diversify your character's portfolio. The thing with Candela is they also have the gilded die mechanic where if you take that result, which again, we talked about, it's interesting to be able to be like, I might choose a different lower value result if I get a thing out of it. But the thing is, with Candela, you only have certain skills that have the gilded die. So it means you're going to want to be good in those skills so that way you can roll more dice. So it's kind of like contradicting itself where it wants you to be diverse in everything, but only some skills are going to allow you to get more of additional dice that you can then roll in other rolls. So I think I can understand why Candela and Blades in the Dark don't want you to roll too many dice, because then it becomes a very obvious probability that you will most likely roll a 6. 6 or more dice, you are statistically likely to roll 6. And they do want outcomes that are like the success but at a cost. Obviously, the World of Darkness games, they already know their system. They literally keep doing that same thing, and then they just change up small parts of it. But like it's really good. I do like that they add the things where it's like if you get a 10, and you're role playing, this happens, right?
Right.
So like in Vampire, but there's like a certain thing where it's like if you're doing the thing and you get a 1, you like frenzy out. So you do it's like you just go full like vampire. But if you get a 10
cool.
but if you get a 10, it's like a messy crit or something like that. And it means you do the thing too well and you use your vampire self in some way. So now it's like, I'm going to pick this lock. I got to
yourself.
Yeah. Because the masquerade is super important in Vampire, right? Like keeping up the facade that vampires don't exist. And yeah, and so it's super interesting because it adds to the role playing where it's like, okay, you succeed at breaking the lock by kicking down the door. It's like, oh, and it goes flying across the room. It's like, oh yeah, a normal person wouldn't be able to do that.
Oh man, I want to play that game so badly now.
Yeah. We played Hunter, and Hunter had similar things with like the oaths and like.
Oh god, that was fun too. I like supernatural things. Like anything you put in supernatural setting, I'm down with.
Yeah.
Like, you give me supernatural, I'll play it.
Also, if you ever think Vampire the Masquerade, the vampires are overpowered, play Hunter the Reckoning and have them fight a regular vampire. You will find out very quickly how overpowered vampires in Vampire the Masquerade are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they almost died.
Oh. Yeah. That was still fun though. I enjoyed that. That was a fun time.
So yeah, that's the dice pools. It's harder to do the math on dice pools. You're not going to be as consistent. They're very much similar to the one dice system. So just keeping that in mind, and then also making sure you have some sort of method to continuously add more dice to it would be good.
Yeah. Having a system where you're going to add more dice to it, because again, the more dice you can roll, the better. But again, just be mindful of modifying that.
Again, I like Fallout system where it's kind of a shared pool. I think, and then like how successful you are determines how much more you add to that pool. I think Fallout does an interesting version of it.
It does it well enough too, where you could get more. You can build your pool back up, which is really nice.
All right, we have one final one, and it's the funky dice.
Town. Oh, funky dice.
Funky Town, Charles. Funky Town. Yeah, you sit in silence while I explain. The upside, you can put whatever you want, because normally dice come with like numbers or pips, but regardless, they represent a value of a numerical value of some kind. When you do funky dice, you get to come up with the symbols yourself, and it can be whatever you want. So for example, we have the Star Wars one here. Fate Core also has its own things with plus and minuses. You get to determine the exact probability of things however you see fit. And so you get to roll multiple kinds of dice. You get to roll a lot of fun dice. You're rolling and seeing what the outcome is. So let's say it's a very difficult task, but I have a decent amount in it. I got, perfect. I got 1 success and 2 advantages. So now we get to determine what that looks like. So the cool thing about funky dice is you get to just do whatever you want with them. You can do some like really interesting things like with the force die. Watch that video if you want to. The downside to funky dice is people have to learn how the heck your dice work, what they mean, and that can take some time. Yeah.
Then you have to explain, if you're coming with your own system, you have to explain what those things mean and have rules for those things, and
right. Like, and here's the thing too with like Star Wars, we learned very quickly and are still learning that fact of like, oh yeah, hey, roll a purple die is what we will say instead of roll a I forget. I think it's a challenge die.
Challenge die, and then there's despair.
Well, despair is like the nat 1. That's the worst result. Is a despair, right? But like that's the thing too. Is like if you what's cool about funky dice is in Star Wars the way they do it is the only way to get crits is by upgrading the dice, and so that's the only interesting way to do it. But that's cool that like you don't naturally have a chance of just critting unless you specifically take the time to upgrade that die, and then you have a chance of critting, which is I think really interesting.
And it's really nice too because it's almost a dice pool setup too to some degree, because depending on how good you are in that skill determines how many yellow dice you have as well. Like because it takes your skill and the stat that it's based on, what those two numbers combined. So say you have like 3 in coercion, and then coercion, what is that? Presence?
Sure. Yeah, presence. Yeah,
something like that.
So 2 in presence. Yeah.
So you'd have 3 dice total, but 2 of them would be upgraded. So you don't add the dice, but you take the one with the largest amount, and then whatever the smaller amount is how many yellow dice you have.
Yeah, and so it makes it really interesting because you can do a lot of things that you couldn't do with these other systems. So like the difference between the Star Wars die here and this die is not any difference. The same amount. It's 6 sides to it. You could have it be, if I roll a 1 or a 2, they're both blank. A 3 or a 4 is just a 3 is a hit, a 4 is an advantage, a 5 and a 6 are like so on and so forth.
Right.
But then you're going to have to confer to a chart and stuff like that, and it gets complicated. And then also, if you're specifically wanting the blank sides to be on opposite sides, now you have to factor that part in too, and it can get complicated. So that's why, like, funky dice, if you're starting to be like, I really want specific iconography, I really want specific outcomes, but like I want it to where it's like if you roll a 1 or a 6, it's a miss. Start looking into funky dice. Yep. Obviously. Then you have to make the funky dice, and you have to.
That's a cost.
That's a cost. You have to make sure people understand the funky dice. But the cool thing about funky dice is it's almost immediately like, what is that? Like immediately you can be like, what are you doing? What is this game? This isn't D&D because you got weird dice. And it's like, cool. Hey, now you got like super recognizable. Yeah, super recognizable at the game.
Yep. It makes the funky dice definitely gives you that unique like turn. Again, if you're making a tabletop game, you obviously going to be a cost to that. However, it does set you apart from other games, other tabletop games, and people are going to, when they see your dice, they're like, what are those dice?
The downside is, as we learned with the Star Wars game, if a company goes out of business, finding those dice can get really expensive. But then suddenly that business can be back in business, and now they're not as expensive anymore. But that is the downside of those things, is that suddenly your dice... It makes it harder in the future for people to play your game, because if they don't have those special dice and you don't have a conversion chart, now suddenly either they have to make an app or they have to 3D print their own and stuff like that.
It's like the leveraged tabletop role playing game, because if you want to buy the book, it's
a lot of money.
It's like hundreds of dollars or maybe thousands of dollars. It's ridiculous. Which I love the TV show Leverage. Had I known that existed when the show was out, I wasn't playing tabletops at the point.
Honestly,
I would have gotten that.
Honestly, the head writer for Leverage, I think he used either Fiasco or Fate Core, one of the two.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And so you could probably just use that system.
So yeah, I love Leverage. Leverage was so good because it's a high system. It's just
yeah. So Charles, as we're wrapping up, I want you to rate in your mind, if you were to make an RPG, which you are in the process of making one. What's the one you would least likely to use, and then go all the way up to the one that you're most likely to use?
The least likely dice I'll use is the one dice system because it's too swingy. The way my system I plan on working it is that you can play it in. My hope is that you can use the system and play it in almost any setting. Like, you determine what the setting is.
Watch our generic systems video.
Yeah. Yes. So you can use this system and play it in any setting. And I don't want something too swing, because again, if you're good at something, I want you to kind of have an opportunity to be good at it.
Right.
And what I'm most likely going to use is going to be the
dice curve.
The dice curve, yes, because I feel that gives you. I can modify it enough. I can there's enough flexibility in there where failures can happen, successes can happen, but also a mixture of the two can happen as well. Like, I like the idea of like what Star Wars does, where you could succeed with a threat type thing. You could do something, but there's a problem that goes along with it. I like the idea that you could also
fail with an advantage.
With an advantage, and all the things in between. I like having that kind of flexibility, because in life, when you make the certain decisions, not everything's going to be crystal clear initially. Like, sometimes, like say you're trying to eavesdrop on someone, and then but you get caught, but or maybe you succeed. Maybe your success is based on like, they didn't know it was you type thing, right? But they're suspicious of you, things like that. That's kind of the system I'm looking at building.
Yeah.
So
I think one of my favorite versions of this is the Marvel, the new Marvel RPG, because they do 3d6, but one of them is specifically different. It's your Marvel die. So that's how they determine when you crit, is if you succeed and you roll a Marvel on the Marvel die. And so, like, do you roll a 6 on the Marvel die? Great. Now something even spectacular gets to happen. And I think that's I want
to play that too.
Yeah, it's a cool idea for that. I have an idea for an RPG. If you've watched the movie The Killer, starring Michael Fassbender, it's on Netflix. It's very good. It's David Lynch. So if you like David Lynch movies,
like David Lynch movies.
It's very. It does go a little too John Wicky. Like, it becomes a little more like John Wick at one point.
That's fine. I like John
Wick too. The first Like, I kid you not, that first like 30 minutes is phenomenal. Like, if that was the movie, I would have been happy. But it came up with an interesting idea of like an assassin getting ready for an assassination.
Right.
And so I was like, well, what would be a cool way? Well, like, assassins literally have to do so much prep work for one chance. And I was like, what if it's a dice pool system? So you're describing, I'm going to go investigate. I'm going to do some research on my client. Okay. Roll a d6. Are you successful? I got a 5. Let's say you're successful. Cool. You get to add that die to a later roll, right? So you're building your dice pool system as you do things, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm successful in doing this. Oh, I got a 1 on this. That means like now there's some heat on me. I got to be careful. So like slowly I start accumulating things. And then you can even be like, I need to make sure I have a getaway vehicle. So I'm going to make sure I buy a car. And maybe that's like an automatic success because you have the right amount of money. So now you just add that. So now,
like, an auto success based upon
right, just like
resources,
and stuff like that.
Oh, I love it.
And so what you would then do is you get to make your shot, but you get to choose how many d6s from your dice pool you get to roll for it, and it's like a target number. So let's say the target number is 12. I'm going to roll 4 dice. I got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I didn't make it. So I made my shot and failed. I got caught. And now I still have to escape. So I have 3 remaining dice that I can use to try to escape. And it's all things that I've planned for ahead of time. So now it's like, okay, I'm going to use my getaway vehicle. How many of my remaining dice do I use to make sure I get out? I rolled a 4. All right, I'm still not fully out. The cops are still after me. I'm in my getaway vehicle. Well, luckily I had a boat waiting for me. 6. I get away on the boat and I have 1 die left over. So I could have used that in my other roll.
That's awesome.
So that was my idea. That was a very quick thing. I haven't fleshed it out.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'd play that.
Yeah, we'll probably if this video does well, and if you guys like it, tell us in the comments. Also subscribe.
Please.
But we can do more videos on like how to make RPGs and stuff like that too, and stuff like that.
So it's again, it's fun stuff. So again, if you have an inclination to do so, do so. If you don't, then don't.
And more importantly, we ask you to stay witty and subscribe, please. Charles has kids.